Tiana backed away slowly, her heart racing so fast she could barely breathe. She had to tell someone, RenJun maybe, but the thought of facing him again made her freeze. He wouldn't believe her. Not now. Not after everything. She reached her room and shut the door quietly, leaning against it as thunder cracked again outside. For the first time since stepping into this mansion, she truly understood the danger she was in. Not just because of RenJun, but because everyone around him wore masks. And the brother who smiled so easily was a murderer waiting for his turn. The room felt smaller every time she paced from one end to another. Her bare feet brushed the cold marble, her mind replaying every word she'd overheard like a cursed melody she couldn't shut off. He killed his father. RenJun's brother, the kind-faced, warm-voiced man who had smiled at her that morning like she was family, was planning his brother's death. Tiana's pulse quickened again. The chandelier above cast fractured light across the room, catching the thin layer of sweat on her skin. She pressed her hands to her face and exhaled shakily. If she told RenJun, it could save his life. If she kept quiet, it could end this marriage faster than any divorce paper ever could. Maybe it was cruel, but part of her wanted out. Wanted distance from the cold mansion, from RenJun's cruel remarks and emotionless stare. Yet, another part of her whispered, "You're not like them." She stopped pacing and glanced at the window. Rain had stopped, but the air still smelled wet and heavy. Without thinking, she slipped on a sweater and stepped out of her room. The hallways were silent. The kind of silence that made the faintest sound of her breath feel loud. She climbed the narrow staircase leading to the rooftop. When she stepped out, the chill wind rushed against her skin. Souls spread out below like a sea of trembling lights. The night air was sharp, carrying the scent of rain and pine. She wrapped her arms around herself, staring into the city. The thought of RenJun dying made her chest tighten, and she hated it. Hated that she cared even a little. She didn't hear the door open behind her. "You don't sleep either, huh?" The deep voice sliced through the quiet. Tiana's breath caught. She turned around slowly. RenJun stood a few feet away, dressed in a dark shirt with the sleeves rolled up, his hair slightly damp. His tone was calm, almost casual, but his eyes, always sharp and unreadable, were watching her closely. "I could ask you the same thing," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I had paperwork," he said simply. Then after a pause, "What's your excuse?" Tiana turned back to the skyline. "Couldn't sleep." "Why?" She shrugged, avoiding his gaze. "Maybe because I'm trapped in a stranger's mansion who treats me like property." He said nothing for a while. Then softly, "You think I wanted this marriage?" "I don't know what you want, RenJun. You barely talk to me unless it's an order." "That's because talking to people is overrated," he said dryly. Her lips twitched into a bitter smile. "You really do hate humans, don't you?" "I don't hate them," he said, stepping closer. "I just don't see the point in pretending to feel what I don't." She turned, finally meeting his gaze. The rooftop light caught the edges of his face. Sharp, almost too perfect. There was something unsettlingly calm about the way he looked at her, like he was studying a puzzle he couldn't solve. Her heart raced. "Tell him," part of her screamed. "Warn him." Instead she asked, "How long have you known your brother?" RenJun's brow arched slightly. "Why?" "Just curious. You don't talk about him." He leaned against the railing, the faintest smirk curling his lips. "Renji. Since birth." "Unfortunately." She frowned. "You don't sound close." "We're not. He's the dumb one. Always smiling, pretending to be harmless." He looked off into the distance. "But he's harmless to a fault. He could never handle what I do." Tiana's stomach turned. The irony almost made her laugh. "You should still be careful," she said quietly. He looked back at her, eyes narrowing. "What do you mean?" "Nothing," she said quickly, shaking her head. I don't know. I get a bad feeling about him. That's all." For a moment neither of them spoke. The wind whipped between them, carrying the faint sound of sirens from the city below. Then to her surprise he said softly, "You don't have to pretend to care, you know." "I'm not pretending," she said. He looked down at his hands, flexing them once. "If you knew half the things I've done, you wouldn't even stand this close to me." Tiana's voice softened. "Maybe not. But you don't scare me as much as you think." That made him glance at her, really look. His expression flickered, something unreadable moving behind his eyes. He stepped closer until she could feel the faint heat of his body against the cold wind. He hesitated, then said, "I almost hurt you." Tiana's breath hitched as he looked away. "I don't apologize easily. But that wasn't supposed to happen." Tiana blinked, unsure how to respond. "You're apologizing? Don't make it sound like a miracle," he muttered. She bit back a small smile. "Well, it kind of is." RenJun sighed and leaned back against the railing again, looking up at the cloudy sky. "I was diagnosed with something when I was a kid," he said suddenly. "Doctors said it was a type of antisocial disorder. Basically means I lack empathy. That I don't feel things the way normal people do." Tiana froze. He turned to her with a faint, unnerving grin. "It's funny really. Makes running a mafia a lot easier. No guilt. No hesitation. Just efficiency." "That's not funny," she said sharply. He tilted his head, studying her expression. "Isn't it? Everyone else treats it like a tragedy. I've learned to enjoy it." Her disgust showed before she could hide it. "You enjoy being broken?" He laughed softly, the sound low and humorless. "You think I'm broken? I think you're trying too hard not to be human." He stared at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "You talk too much when you're scared." Tiana flinched, not at the words but at how accurately they hit. He turned away again, facing the night. "Go inside, Tiana. You'll catch a cold." She didn't move. "You should take your own advice. About your brother." RenJun's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. She exhaled, shaking her head. "You really think feeling nothing makes you strong, huh? But if you ask me, that's just another kind of weakness." He let out a short, almost amused breath. "You'd be surprised how far weakness gets you in this world." Tiana turned to leave, pausing at the door. "You think you scare everyone, RenJun. But maybe you're just scared of yourself." He didn't reply, didn't even turn around. When she finally disappeared down the stairs, RenJun's smirk slipped. He stared out over the city, his reflection in the glass faint and pale. "Scared of myself," he muttered under his breath. Then scoffed softly, almost as if the idea amused him. But his hands, steady as they always were, trembled once before he shoved them back into his pockets. Morning light poured through the tall windows like melted gold, soft and deceptive. The mansion was unusually quiet, the kind of calm that felt like the eye of a storm. Tiana stood by the counter in the dining room, humming faintly to herself as she filled a jug from the porcelain water dispenser. For once, her reflection in the glass pitcher almost looked peaceful. Her hair was tied up loosely, her soft sweater slipping off one shoulder as she moved. She told herself to breathe. To forget the whispers she'd heard last night. Maybe I imagined it, she thought. Maybe it was the wind or someone else talking. The jug filled and she turned around, only to freeze mid-motion. Standing a few feet away was Renji. The smile she'd worn vanished instantly. Her hand slipped. The jug shattered against the marble floor, the crash echoing through the vast room like a gunshot. Her heart leapt into her throat. She stumbled back, staring wide-eyed as water pooled around the broken glass at her feet. Renji blinked once, then smiled, that same disarming, calm smile she'd seen the day before. "Whoa, careful," he said, stepping forward quickly. Tiana moved instinctively backward, but he was faster. He reached out and gently shifted her aside, his hand brushing her arm, warm, steady. "Don't move," he murmured. "You'll cut yourself." She swallowed hard, her pulse drumming in her ears as he crouched down. His fingers brushed over a shard of glass, and a sharp hiss escaped him when it sliced into his skin. Blood welled instantly along his thumb. "Oh," Tiana's voice trembled. "You're bleeding." He looked up at her, still smiling as if it didn't matter. "It's fine. A little scratch. I've had worse." He continued gathering the shards one by one, unbothered by the blood now dripping onto the marble. Tiana's mind spun. This can't be the same man who said those things. The same man who... Her chest tightened. "Are you all right?" he asked gently, noticing how pale she looked. She nodded too quickly. "Why, yes. I'm fine." He chuckled softly. "You don't look fine. You look like you saw a ghost." "Maybe I did," she said before she could stop herself. Renji tilted his head, amused. "Then I hope it wasn't me haunting you." The sound of his laugh sent chills down her spine, not because it was cruel but because it wasn't. It was too easy, too human. It made everything she'd overheard last night feel impossible. Once the last shard was gone, he rose to his feet and walked to the sink, rinsing his hand under the water. The cut was small but deep, and the blood spiraled down the drain like thin red ribbons. "You should bandage that," she murmured, unable to look away. He turned the tap off and grabbed a napkin instead, pressing it to the wound. "It'll heal," he said casually. "Our family has thick blood." Literally and figuratively. Tiana stiffened at the word family. He caught the flicker in her eyes but said nothing about it. Instead he smiled again, softer this time. "You know, I didn't expect to see you smiling this morning. My brother's wife usually looks ready to stab him with a fork." Tiana forced a small laugh. "Maybe I've run out of energy to fight." "Don't give up too soon," he said lightly. "RenJun's not an easy man, but he's not as heartless as he looks." "Really?" she asked skeptically. Renji shrugged. "He just hides it well. Our father taught us that showing emotions gets you killed." Tiana's gaze dropped. "Killed?" The word hung in her mind like smoke. He didn't notice her flinch. He kept talking, wiping his hand clean, his voice smooth and easy. "Our father was tough on him. Always said RenJun was too weak to lead. Guess he proved him wrong, huh?" She nodded absently, trying to steady her breathing. The way he said it, "Our father it was too casual, too clean. No grief, no weight." Her eyes flicked to the crimson napkin he tossed aside. The blood looked too bright against the white cloth. He turned back toward her suddenly and her heart jumped. "You're shaking," he said, his tone suddenly softer. "Hey, relax. I didn't mean to scare you." "I'm fine," she repeated, forcing her hands still. He took a slow step closer. "You know, you don't have to be afraid of me. Despite what my brother probably told you." "He didn't tell me anything," she whispered. "Then let me tell you something," he said, his gaze locking onto hers, calm, unreadable. "You're safe here, Tiana." For a moment the words almost sounded genuine. Almost. Then she saw it. A flicker in his eyes, something sharp and glinting just beneath the charm. Her stomach turned cold. She stepped back slightly, mumbling, "I should clean this up." "I already did," he said. "Then I'll make you some coffee," she said quickly, desperate for a distraction. He smiled again, blood still faintly smearing his knuckles. "You don't have to. But I won't say no." Tiana turned toward the counter, her fingers trembling as she reached for the kettle. Every small sound, the click of the stove, the hiss of steam, seemed louder than it should be. Behind her she could feel his presence. "Come." Watching. She poured the coffee and handed him a cup without meeting his eyes. "Thanks," he said, taking it. "You're very different from what I expected." "Oh?" she asked. "I thought you'd be more desperate," he said casually. "Most people in debt act like prisoners. But you seem calm." "Maybe I'm just better at pretending," she said quietly. Renji laughed again, sipping the coffee. "Pretending keeps people alive. My brother's good at it too." Tiana looked up sharply. "You sound like you envy him." "Maybe I do." He smiled faintly. "Or maybe I pity him. He doesn't even know how the world really works." Her fingers tightened around the counter's edge. "And you do." He met her gaze. For a split second the warmth in his eyes vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. Then the smile returned, effortless. "I like to think so." The silence between them stretched. Finally he set the cup down. "You have a kind heart, Tiana. Don't lose it. Not in this house." He brushed past her gently, his sleeve grazing her arm, and then he was gone, his footsteps fading down the hall. Tiana stood still long after, her breath caught in her throat. Her eyes dropped to the napkin in the trash. The red stain had spread wider. Her mind screamed monster, but her heart whispered liar. Maybe both were true. And for the first time she realized, in this mansion full of luxury and shadows, kindness could be the cruelest weapon of all. The Jeon mansion slept under a blanket of silence, but something about tonight felt wrong. Tiana stood by the window of her room, arms crossed, her silk nightgown whispering against her skin. The moonlight sliced through the curtains and caught the reflection of movement in the garden below. She blinked. Someone was sneaking out. Her brows furrowed as her heart began to thump. It was RenJun. The brother who always smiled too kindly, bowed too politely. He moved fast, cautious, his black coat glinting faintly under the moonlight as he disappeared toward the side gate. What are you doing? She whispered under her breath. She hesitated, biting her lip. Logic screamed at her to stay back, but curiosity and fear had already won. She slipped on her slippers, pulled her robe tight and crept down the marble hallway. Her steps were soft, but her heartbeat wasn't. The air outside was cold enough to sting. She followed at a distance, clutching her robe as the grass wet her feet. But before she could make it to the hedge, a deep voice rumbled behind her. Going somewhere, Mrs. Jeon? Her whole body went rigid. She turned slowly, her heart climbing to her throat. One of RenJun's guards stood there, tall and broad, his face half hidden in shadow. The smirk he wore made her skin crawl. I was just, she stammered. Following someone? His tone was thick with mockery. You must really enjoy testing the rules, huh? Tiana swallowed. No. I heard something, that's all. I was making sure. Making sure. He stepped closer, the gravel crunching under his boots. Your job here isn't to make sure. You stay quiet, pretty wife. That's all the boss wants. Her anger began to rise. Don't talk to me like that, she snapped, though her voice shook slightly. The guard chuckled, tilting his head. Why not? Because you're the Mafia wife now? You think that veil you wore yesterday made you one of us? She flinched at the venom in his tone. Maybe the boss picked you for your looks, he sneered. He needed a distraction. You foreigners are good at that. That was it. Say one more thing like that and I swear. Her words cut off when a blur of motion crashed through the dark. A hand, RenJun's, grabbed the guard by the collar and slammed him against the wall so hard the house trembled. Say that again. RenJun's voice was low, venomous. His eyes burned with fury, the kind that didn't shout. It seethed. The guard gasped, struggling against the chokehold. Boss, I was just. Just what? RenJun's jaw tightened. Disrespecting my wife? Sir, she. RenJun's fist connected with the man's jaw before he could finish. A sickening crack echoed through the air. The guard stumbled, blood dripping from his lip. Tiana froze, her hand flying to her mouth. RenJun, stop. But he didn't. He hit him again, the rage in his eyes unrecognizable. When he finally released the man, the guard dropped to his knees, coughing, his breath ragged. Touch her again, RenJun said, voice sharp as glass, and I'll bury you in this garden myself. The guard didn't wait for a second threat. He scrambled up and bolted into the shadows, leaving Tiana trembling by the doorway. Silence swallowed the courtyard. RenJun turned slightly, his chest heaving, blood smeared on his knuckles. The moonlight cast sharp angles on his face. Cold, beautiful, terrifying. You didn't have to do that, Tiana whispered, her voice trembling. He turned fully, eyes narrowing. You shouldn't have been out here. I was just worried, she snapped back. And you almost killed that man. He should be grateful I didn't. You think that's something to be proud of? He stepped closer, his presence suffocating, but his tone dropped. Lower, quieter. If I don't protect what's mine, this house eats you alive, Tiana. You don't understand what kind of people live under this roof. I understand perfectly, she shot back. One of them almost broke my arm and the other treats me like a... She stopped herself, shaking. Like a what? Like a thing. A decoration you can use when it suits you. His jaw clenched, the anger in his eyes flickering, not toward her this time but inward. That's not what I... Then what is it, RenJun? Because every time I think I see something human in you, you go and do this. He stared at her for a long moment. The sharpness in his face softened just slightly. You don't know what you're talking about. Then explain it to me. I can't, he said simply. You wouldn't want to hear it. Her throat tightened. He started to walk away but then paused mid-step, voice quiet and raw. I didn't hit him because I was angry, he said. I hit him because he talked to you like I used to. Tiana's heart stilled. He didn't wait for her reply. He just disappeared into the shadows again, leaving her alone in the moonlit silence, breathless, shaken, and unable to tell if she hated or pitied the man she'd married. Tiana didn't sleep that night. Her mind replayed everything. The guard's words, the sound of RenJun's fists hitting flesh, the darkness that had flashed across his face. And then that last thing he said. I hit him because he talked to you like I used to. She'd lain awake till dawn, eyes wide open, heart twisting in confusion. Hate was easier. Hate made sense. But this didn't. When sunlight finally filtered into the room, she got up, refusing to look as tired as she felt. The house was already alive with quiet footsteps, maids whispering, guards standing stiffly at every corner. And there he was, sitting in the dining room, calm as though the night had never happened. He was dressed sharply as always, sleeves rolled up, a watch glinting on his wrist, reading a newspaper like the world was simple. Except this morning, there was a bandage wrapped around his right hand, where he'd struck the guard. Tiana crossed her arms and leaned against the doorframe. So violence is your morning exercise now? RenJun didn't even look up. Depends who's watching. Your wife, she said pointedly. That got his attention. He looked up slowly, one eyebrow raised. I didn't realize you liked calling yourself that. She scoffed. Trust me, I don't. But it's apparently what everyone else calls me, so, she gestured around dramatically, might as well play the part, right? He folded the paper neatly, eyes unreadable. You're angry. No, she said, forcing a calm tone. I'm confused. Because last night you acted like a psycho, and now you're eating breakfast like nothing happened. He tilted his head slightly. Would you prefer I sulk in a corner about it? I'd prefer you explain why you had to nearly kill someone in front of me. His voice dropped, calm but heavy. Because he insulted you. She stared at him, incredulous. Do you even hear yourself? You don't fix cruelty with more cruelty. RenJun leaned forward slightly, his tone cutting but quiet. You think I care about fixing anything? That man disrespected my wife. I ended it. That's all you need to know. Except I'm not just your wife for show, RenJun. I'm a person and I don't need you to be my executioner. He sighed, rubbing his temple as if she was giving him a headache. You talk like you understand how this world works. You don't. Then teach me, she shot back. Because all I've learned so far is that everyone here is heartless, including you. That silenced him for a moment. He studied her, really looked at her. The fire in her eyes, the stubborn lift of her chin. Then softly, I don't know how to be anything else. Something in her chest tightened. That's not true. His jaw flexed. You think you can fix me, Tiana? You think just because you cry when I raise my voice or glare when I touch your arm, you're teaching me something about humanity? She blinked, caught off guard by his bitterness. I don't want to fix you, she said quietly. I just don't want to hate you anymore. He looked away, gaze distant now, his voice rougher. Do you know what they called me when I was younger? She hesitated. What? Broken, he said simply. Doctor said I had something wrong in my head. That I don't feel empathy like others do. I didn't even understand what that meant. Only that everyone looked at me like I was a mistake. Tiana's throat tightened. They said I wouldn't survive in this world, he continued, eyes still fixed on nothing. But I did. I learned to pretend. To smile when I should, to nod when people cry, to fake remorse when they expect it. He turned back to her then, eyes dark, hollow and honest. So don't stand there and tell me to be normal because I don't know what that is. She exhaled shakily. For the first time she didn't see the Mafia heir, just a damaged man who didn't know how to be human anymore. You're not broken, she said softly. You're just scared. He almost smiled. Almost. I don't get scared, Tiana. Yes you do, she said, taking a slow step forward. You're scared of being seen. Scared that the second someone does, they'll hate you again. He stared at her in silence, and for a brief moment she swore she saw something flicker in his eyes. Not anger this time, but sorrow. Then it was gone. He rose from his seat, walking past her, his cologne brushing her shoulder like heat. You should eat, he muttered. You'll need strength to keep talking back to me later. She blinked, then huffed in disbelief, half smiling despite herself. He's insane, she muttered under her breath, shaking her head as she sat down at the table, her heart still racing for reasons she refused to name. Outside, the mansion returned to its deceptive quiet. But inside, the line between hatred and something dangerously close to longing had just begun to blur. The days that followed were strange. The same mansion that had once felt like a cage began to feel less like a prison and more like something she could command. Tiana noticed the way the housekeepers looked at her differently now, not as the scared outsider but as someone who belonged. She greeted them kindly, helped with chores she didn't need to do, even laughed with one of the maids about how RenJun always frowned when his coffee was too strong. Little by little, the house began to warm to her. She studied how things worked here, which guards patrolled when, how RenJun's meetings were scheduled, how messages were passed without words. The Jeon mansion ran like a silent machine and she was starting to understand its gears. If RenJun noticed her growing curiosity, he didn't comment, but his eyes followed her everywhere, quietly assessing. At dinner one night she asked him a question that made the entire table freeze. "So," she said, stirring her soup, "what's the difference between a boss and a puppet in this world?" RenJun's chopsticks stopped midair. Slowly he looked up at her. "Excuse me. Just curious," she said innocently. "Because everyone here bows to you, but I wonder, do you ever bow to someone else?" The room went still. Even the servants seemed to stop breathing. RenJun's expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened. "Careful, Tiana." "Why? I'm just asking a question." His eyes met hers, and for a moment it felt like a silent storm passed between them. "In my world," he said quietly, "the ones who ask too many questions end up disappearing." "Then it's a good thing I'm not afraid of disappearing," she said, flashing a sharp smile. He leaned back in his chair, lips curving faintly, not in amusement but something darker. "You should be." She tilted her head, meeting his gaze without flinching. "I think you like that I'm not." That earned her silence. The kind that said he didn't expect that and she might have crossed a line. The next morning she found fresh flowers in her room. She didn't need to ask who sent them. Later that evening, Tiana stood by the grand window overlooking the courtyard, her reflection framed by the city lights. She'd learned the rhythm of this place now, the coded knocks, the unspoken threats. Power, she realized, wasn't just about money or guns. It was about composure, about control. And lately she'd been taking some of his. When RenJun entered the room she didn't turn. She could feel him, the quiet weight of his presence, the shift in the air when he looked at her. "You've been busy," he said. "Someone has to make this place livable," she replied lightly. "You run it like a graveyard." He moved closer, his reflection now beside hers in the glass. "You've been asking questions again. Maybe I like knowing things." He gave a low hum, almost amused. "And what have you learned?" "That your men are more loyal to your money than your name. And that you don't actually scare them as much as you think you do." He turned sharply to face her. "Careful." She smirked, stepping past him. "You say that a lot. Maybe you're the one who's scared." He caught her wrist before she could walk away. "Of what?" "Of me." Their eyes locked. For a moment neither breathed. Something flickered between them, heat, danger, defiance. "Let go," she said softly, though her voice wasn't as steady as she wanted it to be. He didn't. His grip tightened just slightly, his voice low. "You really don't know when to stop, do you?" "Maybe I like seeing how far you'll go," she shot back. That did it. His jaw tensed and his gaze darkened into something raw and hungry. Before she could step back he moved, swift and silent, pressing her against the wall. Her breath caught. His body hovered inches from hers, his hands braced beside her head. "RenJun." "Don't," he muttered, his voice husky. "Don't say my name like that." "Like what?" she whispered. "Like you're daring me to do something stupid." Her lips parted, her pulse wild. "Then don't." He exhaled sharply through his nose, eyes flickering between anger and something dangerously close to desire. "You really don't understand what you do to me." Tiana tried to steady her breathing, but it was useless. His nearness made the air thick. Every inch of her body was aware of him. His scent, the heat radiating off his chest, the faint tremor in his breath. "You don't scare me," she said finally, though her voice came out softer than she intended. He tilted his head, eyes narrowing slightly. "You should stop saying that." "Why?" "Because you want me to be one of those quiet women who bow their heads when you walk in." He gave a humorless laugh. "Quiet women survive longer in this world." "Maybe. But they also die inside," she shot back. "And I already died once, the day I said I do. So go ahead, threaten me all you want, I'm not going to." He slammed his palm against the wall beside her, making her flinch. "I'm not threatening you, Tiana," he said through gritted teeth. "I'm warning you. You think this is a game? You think it's safe to challenge me in front of my men, to act like you're untouchable?" "Maybe I am untouchable," she said, glaring right into his eyes. "Because deep down you won't hurt me. You can't." He froze. His breathing changed, heavier, slower. The way his gaze drifted from her eyes to her lips said everything she needed to know. And she hated that her heart skipped. He took a step closer. You don't know what I'm capable of. Then show me, she whispered almost tauntingly. His jaw clenched. That one line snapped the fragile thread of control he'd been holding. He moved before she could blink, his hand sliding to her waist, pinning her tighter against the wall. His other hand came up to tilt her chin just slightly, forcing her to meet his gaze. This, he murmured, voice deep and rough, is what you do to me. She should have pushed him away. She should have slapped him like before. But her body betrayed her. Her breath caught, her lips parted, and the space between them burned like static. RenJun. Stop saying my name, he growled, but it sounded more like a plea than a command. No, she breathed, defiant even now. I'll say it however I want. His eyes darkened. Then without another word he crushed his mouth against hers. The kiss wasn't gentle. It was messy, desperate, full of everything they'd both been trying to deny. Her hands pushed at his chest at first, but he didn't pull away, and somewhere between anger and hunger her resistance melted. His lips softened, moving slower now as though he realized what he was doing, and hated himself for it. When he finally pulled back, their foreheads rested together, breaths colliding in the silence. For a long moment neither of them spoke. Then Tiana whispered, You think kissing me will make me obey you? He let out a low, shaky laugh. No. It makes me the fool who can't control himself. She swallowed hard, her heart still racing. So what now? You going to pretend this didn't happen? His eyes softened for the briefest second, the kind of softness that didn't belong to a mafia boss. I don't pretend, Tiana. But I don't regret it either. That made her blink. You should. I've lived with worse regrets, he said quietly, stepping back at last. The sudden distance between them made her chest ache, which only made her angry at herself. She wasn't supposed to feel anything for him. Not for the man who ruined her past. Not for the monster she thought she married. But monsters didn't look at her like that. Monsters didn't sound like their own heart was breaking when they said her name. He turned toward the door, his hand lingering on the handle. Don't provoke me again, he said without looking back. I won't always stop myself. Then maybe next time, she said softly, I won't either. He froze for half a second, shoulders tense, then walked out. Tiana stayed where she was, hands still pressed against the wall, lips still tingling from the taste of him. She didn't know if she'd just won their battle of wills, or if she'd started a war she couldn't control. Tiana tied her hair back and walked into the kitchen, her slippers brushing against the cold tiles. The scent of spices and oil filled the air as she opened the cupboard, searching for something to cook. It would be her first time making a meal here, in his house. Her hands moved automatically, chopping vegetables, stirring the pot, but her mind wasn't in the kitchen. It drifted back to high school, to the boy who once humiliated her, laughed at her tears, and now sat upstairs as her husband. The same boy, Tao, a man feared by many. She could almost see his face again, smug, cruel, untouchable. A part of her wondered if she could ever get revenge. She wanted to. The thought of poisoning him flashed across her mind like a dark whisper. One drop and maybe all her pain would end. But she sighed, shaking her head. No. She didn't want him dead. She just wanted peace. By the time she finished cooking, the meal actually smelled good. Too good. Against her will, a small smile touched her lips. She didn't even know why her heart raced as she carried the tray upstairs, knocking softly on his bedroom door. The door swung open. He was sitting on the bed, laptop on his thighs, a faint light from the screen reflecting off his sharp jawline. He glanced up, eyes calm but curious. Any problem? He asked, voice low and even. Looks like you're busy, she murmured, stepping closer. She held out the tray, pretending not to care. I made you something. Don't get the wrong idea. I just wanted you to taste my food, that's all. He took the tray, a teasing smirk tugging at his lips. How does it feel doing wife duties? She crossed her arms. Disgusting. He chuckled, a deep sound that made her roll her eyes. At least it's a feeling. He dug into the meal while she stood there, pretending not to watch him. The sound of the spoon against the plate filled the silence. His face gave nothing away at first, until he looked up and said flatly, 0. Her eyes widened. What? He shrugged, chewing slowly. 0. Terrible. She huffed, snatching the tray halfway. You're unbelievable. I shouldn't have wasted my time. He caught her wrist before she could pull away, his laughter spilling freely now. Relax, I'm joking. He leaned back, licking a bit of sauce off his thumb. It's a 10. Best thing I've eaten in weeks. Tiana blinked at him, speechless. He grinned. Finish getting ready. I'm taking you out tonight. I want to show you something that'll blow your mind. You've earned it. Her heart skipped, unsure whether to feel nervous or curious. Few moments later, they were standing in front of one of the most luxurious fashion brands in Korea, the kind she'd only seen in magazines. Inside, the chandeliers sparkled like falling stars, and every mannequin wore something that looked worth a fortune. Even the cheapest dress had a price tag of 900,000 won. He walked beside her, calm and composed like he owned the place. Pick whatever you like, he said simply, hands tucked in his pockets. She blinked at him. Whatever I like. He gave her a look that made it clear he wasn't joking. Soon she found herself in the most exclusive section, the one reserved for VIPs. Here, customers could design their own dresses, choose their fabrics, even select the type of gold or diamond to be sewn into their outfits. At first she wanted to protest. But when she looked at him, quietly watching her with that unreadable expression, she bit back her words. Maybe this was just what husbands did for their wives. Hours passed before they stepped out of the store. Shopping bags filled the backseat of the car, and the total had climbed to nearly 50 million won. Tiana still couldn't wrap her head around it. He stood at the entrance, the afternoon light catching on his sharp features. Then suddenly his expression changed. His hand went to his chest, fingers pressing hard as his brows furrowed. Hey, are you okay? Tiana asked, stepping closer. He exhaled sharply and forced a small smile. I'm fine. But the next second his body stiffened. He coughed. Once then again and the sound turned wet. Tiana froze as red splattered onto the marble floor. RenJun, she screamed, rushing forward just as he collapsed. She caught him halfway, his weight heavy against her arms. Panic shot through her veins. She grabbed her phone with trembling fingers and dialed emergency services. Please, someone, he's bleeding. He can't breathe. She knelt beside him, her hands cupping his face. Stay with me, okay? Don't close your eyes. Do you hear me? He looked at her, his eyes glassy but sharp with confusion. Blood stained the corner of his lips as he struggled to speak. His voice came out hoarse, trembling. Did you poison me? Tiana's breath caught. For a second the world stopped spinning, only his words echoing in her ears, cold and accusing.